everyone. My name is Olena Rybak. I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of the European-Ukrainian Energy Agency, and I'm super pleased to welcome you here today at our new edition of podcast EUEA.Dialogues in the series Conversations That Matter. Our guest today is Susanne Nies, Project Lead of Green Deal Ukraine and Helmholtz-Zentrum Berlin. Welcome, Susanne. And we will be talking about a very important theme, I would say, right, that is similar to the name of the project that you are leading in Ukraine, Green Deal for Ukraine, the next chapter for Ukraine's energy system. Very pleased to welcome you here today.
Thanks for having me.
So shall we start with a little bit conversation about the project, the Green Deal project, Green Deal Ukraine. You have been operating in Ukraine for quite a few years at the moment. Could you tell us a little bit more? What are your activities, core focus areas, and where you stand at the moment?
Absolutely. Yeah, we started this project 1 year after the war, and we started this as a trilateral project, Ukraine, Poland and Germany, because we believe this new Europe, with Ukraine joining the EU, becoming clearly part of the Western democratic bloc, different from the horrible, barbarian, Russian-led bloc. In order to have this, we need to work as a team. And Germany, my country, has made historical mistakes in being focused on Russia only. We had this Russia first policy, and it's for me a great pleasure to see that our new Chancellor Merz, but also Scholz before, have declared what they call Zeitenwende. It's the change of times, where they really say we need to stop this Russia first policy. We need to look at those countries, let's say, in between Germany and Russia, and we need to work with them instead of working with Russia. So this is maybe the starting block of this project. The project is formally part of the German Ministry of Research and Technology. They fund it. It's located inside of the Helmholtz-Zentrum Berlin. Helmholtz is difficult to pronounce, even for Germans sometimes. Yeah, and this Helmholtz-Zentrum is a huge research structure that does technology, but also energy modeling, data work. We work on batteries, we work on hydrogen, we work on synchrotron, which is like this material research. We work on PV next generation, and now we have this Ukraine project, and probably the most visible project inside of this 1,200 staff Helmholtz Center. And what we are doing there is we do data and modeling on Ukraine. That's a big challenge here. You don't have data, martial law. What is the situation in the regions? What is the demand-supply situation? We have NDAs with Ukrenergo, for example. We do research papers, closely coordinated with our partners, which is ministries, which is European Union, the Commission, which is German government, which is the Polish government, which is, of course, the Ukrainian players, also NGOs. Papers that matter, for example, on interconnections, for example, on market coupling, for example, on innovative technologies. And then we also do capacity building. And maybe the capacity building is a crucial point here, because the next generation leaders for Ukraine, you don't have enough. You don't have necessarily the EU integration skills, and that's where we want to modestly, very modestly contribute.
And if we are talking about capacity building, I work in the engineering sector, so we're also struggling with resources, and we see this on the daily basis in the reconstruction projects, how difficult it is to put up competent teams, also for municipalities, for different market stakeholders. So if we're talking about capacity availability at the moment, right, if we're splitting it by a technical level, institutional or political, where are you more engaged, and do you see any larger gaps in one of these areas in terms of capacity availability?
I think you described it perfectly well. I think this is huge also from companies. I was also working for an innovative grid company from US before this job, and EPC contractors, like those guys, engineering, procurement, and tech, like the installations is a big challenge. So I think there's many challenges, like not enough people on the front line, women staying, many people left the country. So there's plenty of challenges. There's also another big challenge, even unrelated to the lack of people. It's the fact that the ministries are paying poorly, and that no one wants to go there. Even if you train the people for being the great person for the ministry, if then the salary is not matching meeting their needs. Let's say it's not even talking about expectations, can pay for their flight. So we need to also talk about this, and we want to also work on this with European structures. Yeah. So the biggest needs, I think, is not in one sector. It's in every sector. On the energy, I think people in Ukraine discovered that energy is the basis of everything. It's always like this, but not everyone knows it. Now you discover that it's the basis of everything, and therefore you need those people for deployment, what you are doing. You need those people for the regulatory side, designing smart laws. You need those people with the right mentality in the decision-making structures of every kind. In Brussels, here in Ukraine, you need them in research, and you need them to take up the next generation solutions also, because I've been working for NSOE 5 years. I've been working more than 10 years in the energy sector in Europe, and you just see there's a very conservative backlash, because those in charge in our countries are kind of proud of what has been done, are not necessarily open to what could be done. And I think you need to get the new generation taking ownership, having a foot in the door, and Ukraine is leading the way in many areas, and that's an opportunity also. So it's like, yeah.
And there, are you offering, is this educational programs, workshops for any specific, or for any topics where you did more of that so far?
Yeah. So what we did since 23, we did 2 types of trainings. We did trainings for local communities, because of course the energy, that was one part of the story. I like train those guys. What is energy meaning in your community concretely? What energy plan can you have? How can you get access to investments? How do you need to plan this? This was one part. And the other part was on national decision makers, where we trained in the meantime about 400 people, from regulator, from Ukrenergo, from the Ministry of Energy, from Ministry previously of Climate, now Ministry of Economy, to understand EU legislation, to understand technologies, power system, how does it work. We train them together with Florence School of Regulation also. And now in our new cooperation with NaUKMA, the National University Kyiv-Mohyla, we have established just now a center there. We will also set up a master program for the next generation. Master program.
Is this climate Kyiv Energy Climate Lab, something like this?
Exactly.
I heard about. This is the one, right? In
this
NaUKMA.
Is the one. Yes.
Okay. So this is on the university level, a lab that will prepare future talents.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a joint lab owned, let's say, co-set up by Helmholtz-Zentrum and by NaUKMA. And it is there to also work on data modeling, on research, and on capacity building. And it includes training professors, it includes certificates, it includes online trainings, and these master programs that should not be only for students, but also for people from university. We are now discussing having those programs like weekend, evening, that people that work can also follow them.
Okay. Is it feelable, the resource drain among the youngsters at the moment? What do you observe on the university level?
I see a huge interest, and that's quite impressive.
So the interest is
The interest is very high. The interest in being part of the energy world is very high. The offer on the education side is very low. And therefore, I think we are coming into a market. That's what we observed from the beginning. Like we had 2 times more people that applied to our courses.
Oh, super.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's not like as one person coming and please stay. Yeah. It's really, we needed to refuse 50% of the guys, and we assess them by what is your impact? We didn't want to, let's say, train next generation professors. While this is important also, but really train the next generation leaders, those that decide.
Okay, super. No, this is an excellent project. I'm looking forward to see, maybe I can hire a few people, of your graduates in future. So let's move a little bit bigger to the Ukraine's energy sector as such, because this is one of the, of course, core activity where the Green Deal Ukraine project works. What do you see at the moment in the energy sector in terms of perhaps what's on our priority challenges list for the upcoming few years? if you can say a few challenges.
Yeah. No, it's not easy to say, because I think it's so huge challenge. It means like starting with the beginning of the war, Ukraine's energy system was one that was like a little bit Soviet style overbuilt. we had the same in our Western countries before the liberalization kicked in. Yeah, so everything was overbuilt. Typical behavior of people sitting in administration. Let me sleep well at night. Let me build the double of the power plants, the double of the infrastructure, and then I sleep. And that was a fortune for Ukraine. That was really a fortunate coincidence because it helped the country to survive the first horrible attacks that no one expected. Yeah. In the meantime, I think there was this first tentative by Russia. We want to win in the first winter, attacking infrastructure and stuff. And today it's the desire to create humanitarian disaster inside of Ukraine with this horrible last winter that we have seen. But there was a great learning on Ukrainian side. How can we repair in a way that no one would ever do, but it also wasted the assets a lot. How can we protect? I think protection wasn't done sufficiently, clearly. There was like from one day to the other. And in addition, an additional challenge certainly for Ukraine is this corruption scandal, let's be honest. It's the fact that people in the decision-maker position have not been playing the right games, which is super frustrating for those that have been playing the right game day and night. And I think this is half solved to some extent, but it's the crucial thing also to solve in this country now. So I think Ukraine has a lot of assets to solve problems in the future, but also has a lot of problems to still solve. And I think that's maybe the current situation. Yeah.
Okay, but in the beginning of the war, when we managed to interconnect with the European system and import electricity, which was, this was a savior in so many aspects, and this is also one of the very important aspects that helps us still today with all the attempts to destroy this solution, right? So, would you say, right, are we settled in terms of import capacities? Are we using this to the extent that that is already there, or is there still things ongoing to increase maybe the import capacities? And
of course,
how is that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's several elements to the question. First of all, I think one needs to really laud the ones in Ukrenergo in February and March 22. Kudrytsky, Zaitchenko, Alexei Brecht, Maria Tsatoryan, those guys that just did it. I think I've been working for TSOs for a long time, but honestly, this leadership is fantastic. Yeah. I think everyone needs to be proud of those heroes. Also because I think it saved thousands and maybe even millions of lives. We are currently in Ukraine, the peak load in winter is 18 gigawatt. And we have only 11 gigawatt installed capacity. The import capacity in this winter is 2.45, 2,450 megawatt. So this makes, even if it wasn't fully imported maybe, yeah, but it's a substantial part of what is needed. Yes, there can be much more. And also Ukraine is in a fortunate position. You have 5 neighbors. Like, look at the Baltics. When the Baltics synchronized last March, they only have one tiny line. It's like someone hanging on one tiny line. De facto, the Baltics are an island today. They are not really interconnected. They're like island, but not in Ukraine. You have 5 strong interconnections. And there's more projects on the shelf. And I'm always complaining that those projects are way too slow. That's a fashion in the world of TSOs, unfortunately, and also permitting and things like that. But there needs to be a boost of 2 main projects, one to Slovakia. It's the so-called Kapushani project, and the another one to Romania, it's Isacha project. Those would add 2.5 gigawatt. So talking about the possibilities to export to Ukraine in such situations, we could see like 50% more, at least, of capacity if that would be done.
Of import capacity?
Yes,
50%. Wow.
Import and also export, because you don't know about the future of Ukraine. I think you have been seen as an energy hub, rightly. So you can be that maybe transit or production center in the future, but have more interconnection capacity is the name of the game. Plus technology also, yeah. If, it's this Polish-Ukrainian line suffers from what we call in technical terms impedance, which is like simply like a break in the line. And if you add so-called FACTS devices, flexible AC transmission system devices, you add 500 megawatt to the system. And this is also like so slow, and it's just depressing because it's there. Why don't you do it? It's five months to deploy. Yeah.
What about market coupling. I'm here also myself, not an expert. Maybe we could do a short explanation also to our listeners. What is it, right? What impact will it bring to Ukraine? Are we technically ready, structurally ready, or what's awaiting us there in this? Because it's all over, all on the air, like CBAM. So market coupling, CBAM from January, right? So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It means like market coupling. The European Union should not be a Soviet monster. Yeah, some people believe it is. Yeah, like the Soviet bureaucracy in Brussels. Yeah, but it's not. And the idea is like the so-called single market that we have on services, goods, and everything is also expanded to electricity and to gas, to commodity. I mean, oil is not depending on networks. Okay, Družba is maybe exception, but in principle it's not. But electricity and gas, 100% or 80% with LNG are. Yeah, so this is a starting point. Yeah, and we saw before the single market was set up for electricity that every country had different levels of electricity prices. Yeah, so one country 100, one country 20, one country 50. So in the interest of the customers is clearly that you trade among those countries and that you have a better deal because there is competition. Before it was very protectionist. Okay, I want to protect my power plant. I don't want to have anyone interfere. Same, by the way, in railway systems and in other areas. Yeah, planes, it was all national. Yeah, so therefore market coupling is there to ensure that this single market is there in electricity or in energy in general. Yeah, we have seen huge success in the EU with this. When you look at this, is always monitored by ESA, it's the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, and they show every year what is the price differences between the different countries. And you just see over the time that those price differences have been shrinking and that we are quite aligned. And it's not because we have a super monopoly that's managing the full electricity supply. No, it's because we have competition and because the flows go in the right direction. One is short, power comes to them. One is long, power goes out. This is how it should be. Ukraine, I think where are you today in this market coupling? From a very formal side, the regulatory side, it's part of the EU integration. Ursula von der Leyen, Commission President, came here and said 27, Ukraine will be part of the market. No one believes that anymore. It's impossible, very honestly. Yeah, I don't tell her. I'm not direct. But it's just like impossible. Yeah, but 28 could be possible. So from a purely formal side, several steps need to be done, and I will explain those steps. The main step is now this June. Ukraine has to formally apply to what's called the Market Coupling Steering Committee, terrible name, MCSM. And then the process starts to integrate Ukraine with, this is like a very packed 365 days agenda. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. And then happy end, you're part of the story. So what is the problems today in Ukraine? The problem is that the market itself is not functioning sufficiently. There is some sort of market, but it's not what everyone, like OECD reports, everyone would say the same. The market doesn't really function. Yeah, we have the price caps. That's a big problem. Yeah, so while the price normally reflects the scarcity of electricity, in your case it doesn't. Yeah, it just goes to, let's say, the level of the cap, because you want to support the customers, but there no one invests. That's the problem. Yeah, if the price is too low, no one will ever invest, and then you need to say, hey, EIB, EBRD, can you just give me some money? I want to invest. That's not a market. That's a planified economy. So this is the first problem. Then we have the PSO, this so-called public service obligation, which is also like just not helping those companies to survive. The market. They cannot survive the market. They can only survive the market if you constantly subsidize them. And that's not a market. And that needs to be solved. I understand completely that, especially for post-Soviet countries that have experienced the life with water for free, electricity for free, and no one cares, it's very hard culturally to pay for something that you believe is there like the air in your space, but it cannot be like this. And what you need, of course, is to have a targeted support for very vulnerable customers. We have it in every country. In Germany, people that are really not able to pay for their bill, they get targeted support. But someone who is a millionaire or billionaire should not get any support. That's the starting point. Yeah. Then the second point, very honestly, it's never going like a administrative process, market coupling. There is interest. So there might be a company or several companies in Ukraine that just say, I don't want competition from Poland. There might be also in Poland some people that say, I don't want competition from Ukraine. And that's...
We've heard that somewhere. Yes.
Absolutely. Of
in
course.
other sectors.
Absolutely. Slovakia, they were telling me, people from Slovakia, when Ukraine will be coupled, because, we have a situation in Europe that's Belgium and France. France in the winter is a very electric country, electric heating, consumes lots of electricity, and every degree minus 1 gigawatt plus in consumption. It's huge, huge. So small Belgium that also needs electricity in winter see themselves like everything goes to France, their prices go like this because that's the market. They hate it. So it could be, and that's the fear of the Slovakia, that in a case like Ukraine needs massively electricity, Slovakia will see the prices go up. This is the market. But in some other cases, therefore it's balanced. Sometimes Slovakia means that it will go in both directions. But there will be people that don't want it, and there will be people that want to delay it. And for this, normally good decision makers in the government, in the EU, are there, the banks. You have to do this. And now for the current approach in Ukraine, you could subsidize generation. Just say, hey, Zaichenko was just declaring 9.5 gigawatt need to be built to make up for the needs in Ukraine. Okay, do you want to subsidize 9.5 gigawatt? Means that's insane. Also, you wouldn't do the right thing because the market knows much better what is needed, where and what. Okay, so you could try to subsidize it, but much better to set up the market, have the investors, then have this blending of private investors with public support, de-risking, like in the frontline zones where you need much more de-risking, and then you go for it. But it will be a fight for sure.
You said we're applying in June to the steering committee.
Hopefully.
With the complicated name. And then there is this 365-day, a lot of work period.
Yes.
And then we should be ready, you think?
Yeah, but the thing is now, means we are not even, this application looks like simple. I can write it and I give you the text and you send it over. It's not like this. We are currently, even in the Rada, in the parliament, we are stuck with a very important legislation, the so-called electricity integration package. And it's there like in a hamster loop, for 2 years now. Should have been approved in December 24. It's not approved yet. And they are going on the commas and on the points and I don't know what, and they should approve this law, this legislative package, which is the precondition for even applying.
Okay, and what about CBAM that started working in January this year? Obviously, big deal. How is that impacting our current status quo?
Yeah, means CBAM is the carbon border adjustment mechanism and is part, of course, of our Green Deal in Europe, the climate law. We need to protect ourselves in the EU that there is no dumping zones, because there was even also this idea before coal from Ukraine or something would dump into the clean, expensive EU area. The thing with CBAM, it includes electricity, it includes the heavy industry and that kind of things. There's a certain shortfall on electricity in one sense, that we use the statistics from the last 5 years to define the mix in Ukraine, while we should have the data from the current mix. But unfortunately, that's because data are not there and that kind of thing is not there. And that leads to higher price, I would say, to pay on the CBAM, because after the destructions we have seen in Ukraine, there's not much remaining on coal or pollution. We are now factoring in the old system, which doesn't exist anymore. I would say that the two ways out of CBAM, I'm happy, honestly, that CBAM is applied to Ukraine. Let's be very honest, because this is the only perspective that Ukraine has. So if you want to get out of the CBAM cost, which is not so super high, the way out is to have the market coupling and is to have an ETS type system, which you need to have anyway. We talked with the agency SAEE, and we were talking about the so-called pilot possibility. Why not pilot ETS? Why not start with ETS? This is the way out of CBAM. And I think Ukraine has no choice. You need to go there. If you want to join the EU, sooner or later, go there. And we can also, there's a modernization fund in the EU to fund especially poorer or in difficulty countries, member states or accession countries in their climate policy. There's many ways to do it, but there needs to be a leadership in Ukraine to implement a climate framework.
Mm-hmm. You touched on the energy mix. Of Ukraine's energy mix. So based on your discussions and your modeling analysis, scenario analysis, and the current readiness of Ukrainian government, which way are we currently heading? Are we still considering new nuclear power blocks or renewables focused? I understand there will be political decision one day, but where are you tending more? What
I
is the
think
right?
Ukraine has a very interesting mix. In the moment, like nuclear is more than 60. Yeah, you are like a high part of nuclear, a bit of gas, very limited coal, and increasing renewables, a lot of renewables behind the meter. I think this mix of 50-50 nuclear and renewables is very interesting. It's like not really existing anywhere. In France, for example, you have like nearly 78% of nuclear. And then you have some gas and you have a little bit of renewables, but you don't have those countries that have 50-50. And that's interesting.
And this is where you think we're heading? We could?
I think so. I think so. I think that's where you're heading. And I think you're right in heading there, very honestly. I mean, it seems to me, because the nuclear, first of all, you have these assets. You have the engineers, you have the experience. And it's a nice way of planning decentralized, we've centralized, and trying. Of course, the fault or the problem with nuclear is the load following. They cannot really balance anything. It doesn't make any sense economically, but even technically. But you can have some gas peakers to go. So I think there will be maybe 10%, 20% gas, something. You will have nuclear and you will have renewables. It's my anticipation of what could happen.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. As we have seen that decentralized approach is strategically it's difficult. Not in everywhere. It's like I'm very curious to see what will happen with the district heating, with critical infrastructure solutions. How can we manage to go from quite centralized in most of the regional centers in bigger cities to very decentralized? This will be also is economically not doable, but on the example of Kyiv city, we will have to test certain solutions. So let's see. If we are talking about EU accession in general and energy and climate related reforms and policy and regulations, because obviously there also is a very strict to-do list if we want to get to that point of becoming an EU member. How big is this gap at the moment? Where do you see what's on the priority list there?
Yeah, maybe just before answering this question, just coming back to your point on decentralization versus centralization. It's a mistake to discuss it one or the other. I think the future will be one of super centralization, like this HVDC super grid. For example, when you have a solar access in Ukraine, you have it at once in Poland. But with these DC grids, you can transport the stuff to zones that are not in the same weather zones. So this is some perfect advantage. Decentralization, it doesn't mean that everyone sits in his house and has his own little thing, but it's more the off-grid capability, the ability to function in a small system. And we have seen that in the US, New York, 2012, the Sandy storm. They were totally blackouted in the full city with 10 million people. And they were saying never again. They invested $1 billion and they set up a decentralized capable system. So I think that's the story. On EU accession, there was a lot of time lost since last year because of the corruption scandal. Let's be honest. This last Ministry of Energy, I'm talking only about this, has not been capable.
It's quite embarrassing, Yes, awful.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pity because there was some good work done, but it kind of stopped. There was like we really felt it, and Brussels felt it. There was a stop of actions. It's difficult to join the EU in the middle of a war. It's the first country that tries to do this, so we have the best admiration for Ukraine to do it. So what is now the missing bits? Again, governance. It's like NERC is not independent. And if NERC is not independent and NERC is not up to speed, the regulator, nothing can happen. This is the first thing. Then the same goes for these big companies, Energoatom, Ukrenergo, I think it's, let's see. But there's several others. You just need to make sure that these are functioning as they should. Then, as I mentioned already, this electricity integration package needs to be approved, just like as fast as possible. These are the two big laws that are now in the making, the electricity integration package and then NaUKMA, new governance of NaUKMA. And I just hope that Ukraine, it seems to me, honestly, the new government and the new Ministry of Energy, we met yesterday, Mr. Kutzewol, they are really knowing what they have to do, hopefully, and just trying to speed it up. Because like in the context of the possible ceasefire, Ukraine could become member of the EU very fast. Like it's the light accession, so it could be like member without being really member, but would be already some sort of member, maybe next year. So then you need after to fulfill all these conditions to be a full member. And also we don't know how the public opinion in our country evolves. In my country, Germany, everyone loves Ukraine today. But do I know what is in 2030? Maybe not. And therefore, there's no time to lose. And there's a need to use maybe the time of war to make it even more urgency issues. Also in some countries, people get more skeptical about EU accession because it's hard. Ukrainians could be more skeptical about this. Therefore, I think it's really important to do the right steps, and therefore you need leadership, and we are back to capacity building.
Yes, and window of opportunity is not always or not forever open, right?
That's
so
it.
I agree with you. We have to use whatever we can at the moment, and which is quite difficult under certain circumstances because there is only priorities and emergencies and so on.
Yes.
So very difficult to plan long term. Ukraine never was good in it, right? Also before the war, for us to do a strategy longer, or for any municipality or whatsoever, to do a strategy longer than 1-2 years it was already, you have a plan for 1 week as a mayor or a governor or whatever. But yes, so all these reforms will bring us a lot of investments, we hope, right? And we know a lot of these jokes about this huge Ukraine's investment potential. Unfortunately, since 3 decades already, in my also opinion, underutilized. Do you see this already happening? Is this like, because in certain, I work a lot also in Reconstruction sector, and there you have this enormous amount of companies sitting on their suitcases and waiting, the war will be over, we're coming to Ukraine when the war is over, to reconstruct, right?
Yes,
and then the message is there is like, sorry, but reconstruction is happening now. When the war is over, it might be way too late, or you will be already like in the jumping into the train that is long gone, right? Is this the same in the electricity and renewables in this part of the energy sector? How do you feel this interest and readiness to invest already?
I think that's absolutely the key question. I totally agree with this sitting on the suitcases. There's a kind of a silent competition, doing nothing but sitting there. This is also due to the loss of Russia, let's be honest, because Ukraine is kind of also substituting a huge country, all this potential and all these super smart people with innovative spirit. So everyone wants to be part of the game, but everyone sits on the suitcase, and then people also because economic crisis is a reality in the world, like Europe especially. So they invest if they get subsidies. And we spend a lot of money currently on Ukraine, emergency and short-term stuff. Every company is happy to get subsidies and do something, whatever they do. Is there any commercial deployment? I would say it's more commercial deployment by Ukrainians, like Zaporizhzhia Transformers and such companies. I think do amazing job and are quite competitive. Not maybe Western companies because maybe also de-risking is not right because the caps are there, because the PSO is there, because the system, because also uncertainty is there, let's be honest. So you need to, if you really want them to invest now, you would need to de-risk even more. But I think what some Polish guys told me in the Polish PSE, they were saying, hey, when Ukraine reconstruction starts, like in the sense of there's ceasefire and then comes...
starts, exactly.
Well, something like that, yeah, exactly. And then every capacities will be absorbed like black hole, like to Ukraine, and no one will be even able to work in any other country. I'm not so sure that it will not exactly be like this. I think it could be exactly like this. But you're right. It's always happening every day. But the big avalanche of things, the big thing is coming when the ceasefire starts, for sure.
Yes. But this de-risking mechanism you mentioned, which is currently in elaboration by the IFIs and the EU Commission, and your project was, I think, one of the
Yes,
your team
exactly.
was in incredible support in that process. So we'll see what happens there. Maybe at least for the wind and solar and some of the selected renewables, we could see a little bit more movement there. Would be interesting to observe when that is finally launched and how this will work. Okay, so we don't have too much time today, unfortunately, but otherwise I think we could still talk and talk. I wanted to ask you, so you are regularly visiting Kyiv, right? The project works here, you are traveling here, you have seen what happened to Kyiv energy infrastructure in the recent months. It's not like nothing new, but I think the damage that was happening in the recent several months is not non-comparable in this sense, and it's with every attack it's becoming more and more difficult to recover the system. Thankfully, we survived this enormously cold winter and very difficult. But we are here, right? The sun is shining. We're getting to the point of 15 degrees during the day. The life goes on, but the next winter is coming very fast, right? And there is, of course, maybe still a shock after a long, very cold period, or maybe there are. I'm sure there are a lot of people in the background working on the solutions of how do we prepare for the next winter, because Kyiv is a big problem. There are several bigger cities with big problems, and there are multiple mid-sized communities that also have similar problems. But I think for the bigger cities which are operating or largely dependent on big-scale CHPs, which are currently don't seem to be a secure solution. And then there is this debate, like we used to have debate, better building back greener and better or faster, right? This is one side of a debate. And here, are we rebuilding all this massive 200, 300, 400 megawatt CHPs, or what are other combination of solutions? I understand the decentralization and battery storage and all these other things it is, of course, but maybe you are thinking, or maybe you did already any modeling analysis that you can let us peek into.
No, this is a very good point. And precisely today we are meeting Ukrenergo, Detect Grids, and also city administration of Kyiv, because we want to work on this. Yeah. So I think the general picture would be one where you need to prepare the next 2 winters, because we're already like some months ahead of the next winter, and it's not very realistic to have a fully new setting in such a short period of time. And also psychologically, people like, I understand, after this horrible winter, you guys must be just like happy to, you don't want to immediately think into the next tragedy. No one can do this, but the decision makers have to do this, So the solution, for example, let's take this extreme case of Troyeshina, that's just depending on one CHP6 and then on the substation there, and then is the Dniester. So it's really 250,000 or 260,000 people living there, totally disconnected, So what you need to do there is to build around this area the smaller gas-fired generation, 20 megawatt blocks or 50 megawatt blocks at maximum, and that you just simply island, a bit like this New York approach was done. I think this needs to be, you need to have that concept in the pockets, because sooner or later you will have the same problem otherwise again. Do you need to repair CHP6 to still supply? This is a question also of the level of destruction. If the thing is completely flat, let's say, maybe that's not the right approach. You need to also have some commercial thinking behind it. But if there is some ways to repair it and to supply like short-term to the system, that's the right thing to do. But I think what's crucial here is that the decision makers on these levels, TSO, DSO, the city, that they work as a team together with experts and have the scenarios. Okay, maybe you have a half finished solution by next winter, but it's still a half solution. It's not like total blackout.
As long as it's contributing then to the long-term solution.
Long-term
I'm always afraid of this.
Yes.
We are, supplying. I'm sitting only hoping or praying rather that we are not ending up in Kyiv in every backyard, ACH, small-scale CHP, or a generator or a gas generating unit or something like this. This will be, in my opinion, a disaster for others. Like, thank you very much. We're not going to die from drones. We will die from emissions of the diesel generating units or the explosions, for that matter, right? So
absolutely.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Oh, sorry. I 100% agree. By the way, we have a little bit the same discussion in Germany now on I mean, less level here. But first of all, the dependency on big centralized structure is the problem everywhere in Europe. We had 2 blackouts in Berlin. They didn't last very long. Problem is the same. So we are thinking, okay, 10 hours, no electricity. Why should we invest billions? Let's maybe have people no electricity. But here you have no choice. So you can be even a leader in such solutions, I think, really, because like the drones means like you are the leader now globally, not because you wanted to be, you had no choice, but you can even export off-grid capable solutions to many other parts of the world in doing this. And this is what we as project want to look in now, together with partners, and identify a suitable solution for Troyeshina, and hopefully we can contribute something smart to have this half solution for next winter, full solution for 1 year later. That would be fantastic.
1 year later will be super fantastic, because, you know, any mid-sized construction, I'm not even touching 200 megawatt capacities. You are the project cycle for reconstruction of a simple building is 2 years, best case scenario. So.
Yeah, okay, but you can deploy CHP. Let's say not CHP, but open cycle gas. You can deploy in 6 months.
Yes,
in principle.
Yeah. But production, installations, designs, investment, structuring deals. So deploying metal, let's say, or equipment is only one part of the task, and
yeah, maybe one-stop shops. I'm not as deeply as that part of the Ukrainian setting, but I know the EU setting better. Like this permitting, so many people want to. I have to sign. Like all this bureaucracy. Yeah. So you need to also like there need to be this one-stop shop.
But also difficult. Yes, one-stop shop for complex priority projects would be, but difficult to decentralize it completely, because then there is also a lot of misuse, and then it makes some of these projects simply dangerous for people specifically.
Yes.
But yeah. Is there something that you would advise us not to rebuild or not to do in process of reconstruction?
Means I think honestly, no, this Khmelnytsky build-up project was by no means meaningful, and the reason for this is not that Ukraine should not do any nuclear, and that's not the thing. But the fact is that this Khmelnytsky, it is on the western side of Ukraine, and the problem today is west-east transfers. And why should you build more capacity? This was conversations we had with Alexei Brecht, who is one of the, unfortunately died. And he was clearly confirming this. Plus, this Bulgarian blocks doesn't help at all. It's a huge pollution. It's complete crap, very honestly. I personally don't believe in small modular reactors either. Very honestly, this is a big fashion everywhere now. But when you think about it, normally they are in submarines. What is the security concept behind this? It's nuclear still. Yeah, even if it's small reactors. But who is protecting this? Yeah, in a country that's just maybe hopefully coming out of war with a lot of weapons around and all these kind of things. Like, I don't believe that's a good solution either. But I believe that this nuclear and at some point extension of lifetime and building, then I wouldn't use any more Russian technology 100%. No VVR, no nothing of that.
The Chinese, for that matter, also becoming a problem. Anything.
Yeah, China is maybe the most vegetarian country at this point in time. They stick out of the conflicts, but you never know what changes. Exactly, that's the thing. But I mean, you have Westinghouse from Canada, you have plenty of other solutions, Korea and KEPCO and everything. Yeah, so you can find other solutions. So I think this is the way to go. No Khmelnytsky with the plan that was existing, which was existing most probably for other reasons, as we know, because these big infrastructure projects are always nice to fill the pockets, let's be honest. Yeah, and the SMRs I would carefully explore, because no one is doing this today, and Ukraine should not be a test ground for things that no one believes in sufficiently. Yeah.
Have you observed any? Do you have any your favorite reconstruction failures so far on the market that you have seen happening?
Here in Ukraine?
Yes.
No, I wouldn't say Khmelnytsky did materials. That's good news. I'm really admiring how creative. It was like circus. Like, you know, when you know the world of construction and you know how serious everything. And then you see people that just like, okay, let's do it. Let's take this turbine. Let's do it. Let's deploy it. Like, wow, how can you do this? And that is something everyone was totally amazed with. But it's also clear. I think what everyone needs to be aware of is that the aging of everything in Ukraine with those ways of operating the system is completely different from normal systems. So when electricity grids, for example, last for 40 to 60 years, if you run them like a car that would go in the first gear 180 on the highway, like it's for sure that when the real reconstruction starts, one needs to take stock of the aging infrastructure, power plants, distribution system, transmission system, everything. That's So, but I didn't see massive mistakes. What would you mean by that? Like Zaporizhia losing it in the beginning of the war, what could you do? Kakhovka, what could you do? It's terrible, but it means like this is Russian barbarianism Ukraine could do.
I wouldn't classify those as reconstruction initiatives. For me, I have this one example of what I would find almost close to a failure. We had one community that received national funding, so Ukrainian funding, for one of the buildings that was destroyed during the Russian occupation. And so a few years later, they were so excited they got under this national program, and the reconstruction works started happening. And we were like, cool, how are you going to heat the building? They were like, individual gas boilers. And I'm sitting there, it's like, oh my God, 2 years into conferences, zero gas energy strategies, building back greener and better and so on. And here we have state money, so donors probably wouldn't allow that anyhow happening. And here no one is even thinking, why are we doing this? We are rebuilding the building pretty much from scratch. There was only parts of the walls that could be kept. But entire internal networks, everything had to be built from scratch. So who comes to this, or who does not come to an idea to do something more out of it?
Yeah. So maybe just one point to add to your question. Like, I'm not really a reconstruction, but I think there was one mistake really done. It's protection. And I think Ukraine has done a great job. Energo-Atom has done a lousy job, let's be honest. Yeah. And we talked to them as well, like a year and a half now before. Yeah. And this protection of all the non-nuclear parts of those infrastructures. Yeah. I think this is just like, why is it not happening on some spots? Yeah. This is difficult to understand. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Susanne. We have to come a little bit closer to the end. Maybe one last question from your experience of being and working and traveling to Ukraine so far. What has been your maybe one single biggest challenge? What is the most difficult for you at the moment, either professionally or perhaps personally, of working and being in this country?
It's the border, very honestly. It's this border, which like sometimes people are annoyed with something. You need to apply for a new passport in your country and you wait for many hours at the administration. And you're like, you hate the administration, but you don't do anything. Yeah. And each time I come now with this train or even with cars, you have to wait many hours in both directions. And this is so stupid. I'm not blaming Ukraine, but it's also blaming Poland because, if you really mean it with this EU integration, it should be like fast. There's old people traveling, there's businessmen traveling, there's diplomats traveling, everyone traveling. It's great they are traveling. Everyone is afraid to come. Why do you make their life so difficult? And this is something we need to change. And I think we need to get out of I'm fed up with the border attitude, but take this as a strategic failure of EU integration with Ukraine. And this needs to change. This is my only worry.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all your effort and work and believe in Ukraine. And we're looking forward to see all this effort paid back in super reforms in Ukraine and synchronized and coupled energy sector with many less challenges. Thank you for being with us today. Our guest today was Susanne Nies, project lead for Green Deal Ukraine project. My name is Olena Rybak. I was your host in the podcast of European-Ukrainian Energy Agency, EUEA.Dialogues. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we look forward to seeing you in future editions. Thank you. Thank you, Susanne.
Thank you.